The day I came home early from a business trip, I learned adultery isn't always the worst thing you can find in your bedroom. My wife's best friend stood pale in my living room, her body blocking the hallway. "She's not here," she said. "Don't come in." I should have listened. Instead, I pushed past her to a half-empty closet, a note in my wife's handwriting, and a quiet devastation that shattered more than just my marriage. That afternoon didn't end my world. It cracked open something I didn't know I needed. I'm Adam, 35 years old, 7 years into a marriage I thought was rock solid. I came home 3 days early to surprise my wife Sarah, but the surprise was mine. Her best friend Megan stood in my living room, pale and shaking, her words blocking the hallway. The note on the empty dresser told me my marriage was over. But the confession Megan whispered next told me why, and what she'd been too afraid to feel for 2 years. I'd been married to Sarah for 7 years, together for 9. That's long enough to memorize someone's coffee order, their breathing when they sleep, the exact silence that means something is wrong. And for most of that time, I believed our marriage was stable. Not perfect. We fought about laundry, about money, about whose turn it was to host the holidays, but safe. The kind of safe that doesn't require constant checking. The kind of safe I was too comfortable to question. We met in our early 20s at a mutual friend's rooftop party. Sarah walked in wearing a yellow dress that made the whole room feel underdressed. She was warm, loud in the best way, quick to laugh and quicker to forgive. I fell hard. 2 years later, we were married in her parents' backyard, a small ceremony with fairy lights and too much champagne. Everyone said we looked like the kind of couple who'd make it. I believed them. Fast forward to last spring. My job managing operations for a regional bookstore chain meant occasional travel. I didn't love the trips, but they paid well and kept us afloat while Sarah built her interior design business from home. The trip to Phoenix was supposed to last 10 days, a rollout of new inventory software across 3 locations. Training sessions, troubleshooting, long dinners with vendors who talked more than they listened. By day 7, I was exhausted and a little homesick, so I made a decision that felt romantic at the time. I'd finish my last meeting early and catch the red-eye home on Wednesday instead of Saturday. No warning. I'd walk through the door with flowers and coffee and surprise my wife 3 days ahead of schedule. Sarah had seemed off on the phone the night before, but I chalked it up to stress. A big client had backed out of a project, she said. She was tired. I told her I still had the full week in Phoenix, and she said something strange. "Maybe some space will be good for us." I laughed it off. We've been a little distant lately, but every marriage goes through quiet patches. I didn't read the weight behind the words. That was my first mistake. When my plane landed in Seattle at 2 in the afternoon, the February sky was the same gray blanket I'd left behind. I grabbed my carry-on, skipped the overpriced airport flowers, and drove straight home. The house was a blue split-level on a maple-lined street, the kind of neighborhood where kids left bikes in the driveway and neighbors borrowed sugar. Normal. Quiet. Except when I pulled into the driveway, I saw Megan's silver Honda parked at the curb. Megan was Sarah's best friend since college. They'd been inseparable through bad boyfriends and worse haircuts. She was an art teacher, gentle and perceptive, the kind of person who remembered your birthday without Facebook. I liked her. She'd been around so long she was practically furniture. Good furniture, the kind you'd never think to throw out. So seeing her car wasn't strange, but something about it being 2 o'clock on a Wednesday tugged at my gut. She should have been at school. I unlocked the front door with my key, rehearsing the surprise line in my head, only to freeze in the entryway. Megan stood in the middle of my living room, not sitting, not holding coffee, standing rigid, arms crossed, her face the color of old milk. She looked at me the way someone looks at a car accident in slow motion, helpless, knowing what was coming, unable to stop it. Before I could say a word, she stepped forward and blocked the hallway that led to the master bedroom. Her voice shook. "She's not here, don't come in." The sentence didn't make sense. Sarah worked from home. Her car was in the garage. I felt heat rise in my chest. "What do you mean she's not here?" I asked. Megan's eyes filled with tears. "Adam, please, just wait." I should have listened. I should have stopped right there and let Megan say whatever she had come to say. But something primitive took over, the need to know, the need to control a narrative that was already slipping away from me. I gently pushed past her, my shoulder brushing hers, and walked down the hallway toward the bedroom. Her footsteps followed, soft and desperate, like she was trying to catch up to a fall that had already started. The bedroom door was open. I stepped inside and my body understood the damage before my mind did. The closet doors were ajar and half of Sarah's clothes were gone. Her side of the dresser was bare. No jewelry box, no perfume bottles. In the center of the empty space lay a single piece of paper, folded once, my name written on the front in Sarah's neat cursive. The silence in the room pressed against my ears. Megan stopped behind me and I could hear her crying without making a sound. I picked up the note. My hands were steady. That's the strange thing, in moments like this, your body sometimes feels calmer than your mind, as if it's trying to protect you from the full impact. I unfolded the paper and read the first two words. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I can't do this anymore. The rest of the words blurred, then sharpened, then blurred again. Sarah wrote about feeling trapped, about loving me but not being in love with me, about needing to find herself without the weight of us. She said she'd been planning this for months, had rented a small apartment downtown, had slowly been moving things out while I was on business trips. The trip to Phoenix had been her final window. She'd timed her exit so she'd be gone before I returned. I read the letter twice, then a third time, waiting for the rage to arrive. It didn't. What came instead was a cold, hollow quiet, the kind that settles in your chest and makes breathing feel like a decision. 7 years of marriage, 9 years together, and the woman I'd built my life around had disappeared without a single conversation. No fight, no counseling, no warning signs I'd been smart enough to read. I turned to face Megan. She hadn't moved from the doorway. Her arms were wrapped around herself now, and tears had cut clean tracks through her makeup. She looked like someone who had been holding a secret so heavy it had reshaped her posture. "How long have you known?" I asked. My voice came out steadier than I felt. Megan closed her eyes. 4 weeks, 4 weeks. I had been in this house with Sarah for 3 weekends during that stretch. We'd cooked dinner together, watched television, made small talk about her clients. And the entire time she'd been packing her life into boxes while Megan knew. "She made me promise," Megan said, her voice breaking. "She said she couldn't face you, that if she told you in person she'd lose her nerve and stay, and then she'd resent you forever. She begged me to be here when you got back. She didn't want you walking into an empty house alone." I stared at her. The logic was so twisted it almost made sense, which only made it worse. Sarah had outsourced the hardest moment of our marriage to her best friend, leaving Megan to absorb the explosion. But something didn't fit. The way Megan had blocked the hallway, the terror in her face, the whisper, "Don't come in." That wasn't just someone delivering bad news. That was someone trying to stop something bigger than a note. "What aren't you telling me?" I asked. Megan's breath caught. She looked at the floor, then at the empty closet, then finally at me. And what she said next didn't just reframe that afternoon, it reframed the last 2 years of my life. "I wasn't here for her," she whispered. "I was here for you." I waited. The silence stretched. "I've been in love with you for 2 years, Adam," she said. "And I never told anyone, not Sarah, not you. I buried it so deep I convinced myself it wasn't real. But when she told me she was leaving, I didn't think about her. I thought about you, about what this would do to you, about how badly I wanted to be the person who made sure you were okay." I didn't speak. I couldn't. The confession rearranged every memory I had of Megan. The holiday dinners, the late nights when she stayed after Sarah went to bed, the way she always seemed to notice when I was tired before anyone else did. I'd read all those moments as friendship. She'd been reading them as something else entirely. Megan wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I know how this sounds. Your wife just left and her best friend is standing in your bedroom confessing feelings. It's a terrible cliché. But I need you to understand something. I didn't want this. I fought it every single day. I pulled back from dinners, made excuses to avoid being alone with you. I never crossed a line, never said a word, because I loved Sarah too. I loved both of you and it was destroying me." She finally stepped into the room, her voice steadier now but still fragile. "When Sarah asked me to be here, I said yes because I thought I owed it to her. But I also said yes because I couldn't stand the idea of you coming home to an empty house and breaking apart alone." The weight of that landed somewhere deep. Sarah had planned a clean disappearance, leaving behind a note like a receipt for our marriage. Megan had volunteered not out of loyalty to Sarah, but out of a quiet, impossible love she'd been carrying alone. Both of them had been hiding huge truths from me, but only one of them had stayed. I sat down on the edge of the bed I'd shared with Sarah for 7 years, and for a long moment neither of us spoke. Megan stayed standing, trembling slightly, giving me space. 2 years, I finally said. You felt this for 2 years and you never said anything. Never, she confirmed. I was terrified of losing both of you, and I was terrified of what it would mean if I said it aloud, that I was a terrible friend, that something was broken in me. Her honesty disarmed me. I'd spent the last 20 minutes absorbing the fact that my marriage had been a lie. Now I was absorbing the fact that the most honest person in the room was the one I'd least expected. I looked up at her. Why are you telling me now? Megan met my eyes, and for the first time since I'd walked through the door, she didn't look afraid. She looked exhausted but certain. Because I just watched you read the worst news of your life and I realized something. I've spent 2 years being silent, and all it did was make me complicit in a different kind of lie. Sarah chose to leave without giving you a voice. I'm choosing to stay and give you the truth, even if it costs me everything. She paused, then added, quieter, You deserve to know why I'm really here. Not because of her, because of you. The room felt heavier than it had before, but something had shifted. Sarah's note was still in my hand, but it no longer felt like the only story in the room. There was another story now, fragile and terrifying and completely unexpected, sitting in the space between Megan's confession and my ability to process it. I set the note down on the empty dresser and asked the only question that still mattered. What happens now? Megan didn't answer right away. She walked past me to the window, looked out at the gray Seattle sky, and then turned back with an expression I'd never seen on her before. It wasn't hope exactly. It was the beginning of something honest. That depends, she said, on whether you're willing to have a longer conversation, in the kitchen, with coffee, because I'm not leaving until I know you're okay. And that was the moment I understood. The afternoon that ended my marriage was also the afternoon that started something else, whether I was ready for it or not. We walked to the kitchen without a plan. I filled the coffee maker on muscle memory while Megan settled at the round table by the window, the same table where Sarah and I had eaten 100 quiet breakfasts. The house felt like it belonged to someone else now, familiar furniture, unfamiliar weight. I brought 2 mugs to the table. Megan's hands were shaking when she took hers. I sat across from her and finally unfolded Sarah's note completely. Beyond the opening apology, the rest came into focus. She wrote that she'd felt invisible for years. Not unloved exactly, just unseen. She said she'd stopped recognizing herself in our marriage, that she'd become a supporting character in a story where she used to be the lead. She didn't blame me entirely. She said I was a good man, a steady man, the kind of man who'd never cheat or yell or leave the toilet seat up. But she'd realized that safety wasn't enough. She needed to feel alive again. And then came the line that cracked something open in my chest. She wrote, I've been gone longer than you know. You just didn't notice because I was still sitting at the dinner table. I set the letter down. Megan was watching me, her eyes red-rimmed. She's right, I said. I didn't notice. Don't, Megan whispered. Don't do that to yourself. Do what? Take all the blame. Sarah had her own silences, Adam. I loved her, but she wasn't innocent in this. She stopped trying months ago. I watched it happen. That landed somewhere between comfort and accusation. I didn't know how to hold both at once. Megan took a long breath. You want to know the worst part, the part I'm ashamed of? I nodded. The night she told me she was leaving 4 weeks ago, sitting right here at this table, I didn't try to change her mind. I didn't fight for your marriage, I just listened. And then I went home and cried, not for her, not for the friendship I was losing, for you. Because I knew what was coming and I couldn't stop it, and part of me hated her for doing this to you. She paused, her voice dropping to something barely audible. And another part of me, the part I've been trying to kill for 2 years, felt something I couldn't admit. Relief. Because if she left, I wouldn't have to pretend anymore. I wouldn't have to sit at dinner parties and watch her take you for granted. I wouldn't have to hate myself for wanting something I wasn't allowed to want. The word relief hung in the air like smoke. I should have been angry. Maybe I was, somewhere beneath the numbness. But what cut deeper was the recognition in her confession. She'd been invisible too, standing right beside my wife for years, carrying feelings I never noticed, just like I'd never noticed Sarah pulling away. "So you've been suffering in silence," I said. "Both of you, and I was the only one not paying attention." Megan shook her head. "You were paying attention to the marriage you thought you had. There's a difference." Sarah hid her unhappiness behind smiles and small talk. "You're not a mind reader, but you saw it." "I saw it because I was looking for cracks. That's not noble, Adam. That's selfish. I was watching your marriage the way a person in a drought watches the sky, hoping for rain, knowing the storm might destroy something." That metaphor struck me as brutally honest. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time I saw not Sarah's best friend, not the polite presence at a dozen gatherings, but a woman who had been holding up walls so carefully that she'd forgotten what it felt like to stand in the open. "When did you know?" I asked. "2 years ago. You said 2 years. What happened?" Megan stared into her coffee. "Your birthday, not the party, not the big dinner. Later that night, after everyone left, you were in the kitchen washing dishes by yourself. Sarah had gone to bed. You didn't know I was still there. I'd come back for my jacket. You were humming some song I didn't recognize, sleeves rolled up, completely at peace in a quiet moment. And I stood in the doorway and realized I wanted to be the person who saw you like that. The real you. Not the husband, not the provider. Just you, with dish soap on your hands and a terrible singing voice." I remembered that night. I hadn't known she was watching. The memory felt like a photograph I'd never taken. "I left without my jacket," she continued. "Walked to my car, sat in the driver's seat and told myself to grow up. You were married to my best friend. This was nothing, a crush, a moment, but it didn't go away. Every dinner, every holiday, every accidental glance, it stacked up. And I became very good at pretending I was fine." She finally lifted her eyes. "I'm not telling you this to pressure you. I'm telling you because I can't carry it anymore. I've spent 2 years lying to everyone, including myself. And now, on the worst day of your life, I'm dumping this at your feet. I know how that looks. I know what people would say. So after today, I'm going to step back, give you space. I have a sister in Portland. I can stay with her for a while." She was going to leave. After everything, after confessing the one thing she'd been too terrified to name, her instinct was still to protect me by disappearing. Something shifted in my chest then. Not love, not yet, not in that moment, but something adjacent to it: respect, recognition. The understanding that while Sarah had chosen silence and a note, Megan had chosen to stay and speak, knowing it might destroy her. "Don't go," I said. The words came out before I could stop them. Megan froze. "I'm not asking for anything," I said. "Not now, maybe not ever. But I just found out my marriage was a lie, and you're the only person in the world who told me the truth today. I can't." I stopped, ran my hand over my face. "I can't be alone right now, and I don't think you should be either." Megan's eyes filled again, but she didn't look away. "Adam, that's not fair to you. You're in shock. You're not thinking clearly." "I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years. I'm not saying I feel the same way. I'm saying I want to understand. I want to talk. I want to know the person who saw me washing dishes and heard something worth staying for." She didn't answer right away. The kitchen clock ticked. Outside, the gray sky was darkening toward evening. Finally, she whispered, "Okay, I'll stay, but we do this slowly and honestly. No more hiding." "No more hiding," I echoed. And for the first time all day, the hollow in my chest felt a little less empty. We stayed in that kitchen until the streetlights flickered on outside the window. Two people at a table, coffee long gone cold, weeping and talking and sometimes sitting in silence. Megan told me things she'd never spoken aloud. About the guilt of loving her best friend's husband. About the therapy sessions where she described me only as a hypothetical. About the small kindnesses from Sarah that now felt like unintentional cruelty. I told her things I hadn't admitted even to myself. That I'd stopped dreaming about the future years ago. That our marriage had become a comfortable shell. That the hollow in my chest had been growing long before Sarah's note gave it a shape. That conversation didn't fix anything. It couldn't, but it planted something. The next morning, Megan left for Portland. We agreed on 3 months of space, no contact unless urgent, time to let the dust settle. I spent those months in a strange fog, meeting lawyers, packing Sarah's remaining belongings, learning to cook for one again. The divorce was quiet and uncomplicated. She'd already moved on, already living downtown, already someone else's memory. We signed papers in a sterile office and she hugged me once, stiff and brief, before walking out of my life. That was the last time I saw her. What surprised me was the grief. Not for her exactly, but for the version of myself I'd been when I believed in us. That version had been naive, maybe even willfully blind, but he wasn't a bad man. He just hadn't learned to look beneath the surface yet. 3 months passed. Megan reached out by text. "I'm back in town. Coffee if you're ready." I was ready. We met at a small cafe near the waterfront, neutral ground. She looked different, lighter, less guarded. She'd cut her hair short and started painting again. I told her about the divorce, the quiet apartment, the strange relief of no longer performing a marriage. She told me about Portland, about her sister's garden, about the journal she'd filled with letters she'd never send. We didn't rush. That was the thing. Every week we'd meet somewhere. A walk along the Sound, a bookstore, the bench at Gasworks Park, and we'd talk. Not about the future, not about feelings, just about our lives. Slowly, without announcing itself, trust rebuilt. Then one evening in early autumn, we were sitting on her porch, watching the leaves turn, and she said, "I'm not waiting anymore. I'm not expecting anything. I just need you to know that I still feel what I felt that afternoon. But now it's different. It's not desperate. It's patient, and it's yours if you ever want it." I looked at her, the slant of afternoon light across her face, and realized I'd been wanting it for weeks without nomming it. "I want it," I said. She smiled, small, cautious, beautiful. We kissed then, not because a moment demanded it, but because there was finally nothing in the way. But the final surprising detail didn't emerge until a month later. I was cleaning out the attic, sorting old boxes, when I found a journal Sarah had left behind, one I'd never seen. Most of it was mundane, but the last entry, dated 6 months before she left, caught my breath. She'd written about Megan. About how Megan had confronted her one night, quietly furious, telling Sarah she needed to be honest with me, that disappearing without a word would destroy me. Sarah had dismissed her, accused her of meddling, and wrote, "Maybe she's right, but I can't face it." And part of me suspects Megan's motives go deeper than friendship. I won't give her the satisfaction of being right. So Sarah had seen it. She'd known Megan's feelings, at least suspected them, and turned her back on both of us. I closed the journal and sat in the dusty attic light. The truth that unraveled my marriage wasn't just the absence. It was the deliberate silence of everyone involved. Megan had been the only one willing to break it, and she'd done so at great cost. That evening I told her what I'd found. She listened, cried a little, then said, "I didn't tell you because I didn't want to poison your memory of her. I wanted you to reach your own conclusions." Then she took my hand. "I'm done keeping secrets." We both were. That afternoon didn't just end my marriage. It started a new definition of love, one built not on grand gestures but on the terrifying, liberating choice to stop hiding. Now, when I look back, I don't see a tragedy. I see a door I almost didn't walk through, and the person standing just beyond it, waiting for me to be ready. I used to believe that the worst thing one person could do to another was betray them, but I've learned there's something more corrosive than betrayal: silence. Sarah's silence. The silence I lived inside for years without knowing it. Even Megan's silence, carried for 2 years out of loyalty and fear. The real devastation wasn't the empty closet or the note on the dresser. It was how many words went unspoken before that afternoon, and how close I came to building my future on that same quiet ground. When I think back to the moment Megan blocked the hallway, I realize she wasn't just protecting me from a truth I wasn't ready to hear. She was giving me the thing Sarah never did: a choice. An incredibly messy, complicated, fragile choice. And the conversation that followed didn't fix everything. Some days it still doesn't. But it opened a door neither of us could close again. Here's what I keep wondering. How many of us are living inside silences we've convinced ourselves are necessary? How many truths are we swallowing because the timing isn't right, or because speaking them might cost us everything? And what would happen if we said them anyway? Have you ever held on to a secret that felt too heavy to carry and too dangerous to release? Or discovered that someone you loved had been quietly disappearing long before they actually left? Tell me your story in the comments. I read every single one. If this resonated with you, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.